silence grew, swallowing us whole. My eyes raced to my watch, and I noted that I had 2 minutes before the bell rang. Memories from the summer flashed by. Early morning texts, midday lunches, late night phone calls. Endless elbow nudges and whispers from past classes flooded my mind, but it paled in contrast to the 2-foot gap that now separated our chairs. A gap that began when one day he began ignoring me over every single form of technology possible, and I am not exaggerating. 1 minute. I began to process the request, no demand, I had to make for answers I never received from someone who I thought was so crucial to my very existence, and why they so abruptly disappeared from my life. My breathing rapidly increased, my legs began to shake the chair out of their own accord, and I am sure that my heartbeat was louder than the late Friday chatter that surrounded me. When the bell rang, I turned sharply to my left. We need to talk. Honestly, I'm pretty familiar with this specific anxiety, but it's unlike in the situations where the calm sets in for me after being handed a test or stepping onto a brightly lit stage, just like the one in front of you, where the words resurface after being forgotten just mere moments ago. Here, I'm left breathless before, during, and after. I would be lying if I said it wasn't difficult. Hello, everybody. My name is Sravya Balasa, and today I will be discussing with all of you why honest communication is important, especially in the digital age we currently live in. The digital age our generations are growing up in has facilitated an environment where the norm is to hide, and I don't blame you. It's natural. It's easier to ignore others than to face them face to face and tell them exactly what we feel. So let me break down this natural response cycle for you that we're all so guilty of. First, we delude ourselves into phase 1, extinction. Psychologically, it's defined as the natural reduction of a response rate to a stimulus. And this stimulus may be your parents, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whomever. We extinguish the intensity of our feelings by ignoring the stimuli. But extinction, it's not the same as unlearning. It's why we have phase 2, spontaneous recovery. It's what happens when you're visibly disturbed at the sheer sight of someone who you thought you had no longer feelings for. The feelings are reconditioned and brought back up when the stimuli is reintroduced, even though you thought you'd suppressed them. And if the stimuli is reintroduced for longer periods of time, connections and problems inflow at a faster rate. But why do we expose ourselves to this dangerous pattern? I just want you to think of a balloon. And let's say you have a needle in your hand. And ever so gently, you touch the needle to the balloon. It will pop, loudly, noticeably, freakishly easily. With egos as fragile as balloons, when we think our points of view are correct, we do not want to be shown otherwise. It's why we become defensive for being berated for sneaking out at 3 a.m., figuring out who should split the bill, or approaching a difficult breakup. The vulnerability it requires is not in our nature. Avoiding the prick of the needle is easy, and we like easy. But I'm wrong whenever I think that avoidance brings peace of mind. Communication is getting across beliefs about important information, information that can defend, bend, or break relationships. Small talk to avoid it harbors enmity. Assuming that others would react negatively and thereby avoiding it as a result, floods our mind with a never-ending spiral of thoughts. Unanswered questions, words at the tip of our tongues, eat away at our brains until seeing that person triggers a screaming match or worse. Depression, anxiety, emotional instability, see, accept, ignore, see, accept, ignore. It's a terrible pattern. This may escalate to the point in your lives where you may end up standing on a stage in front of a room full of people just to enlighten them to the facts, yes, facts, that every single moment of unanswered questions will consume them. The purgatory of pretending you have no need to converse, but still having a mind consumed by unresolved disputes is painful. The only way to truly escape this limbo is to be direct with others, ourselves. Otherwise, we miss our chance for peace of mind. You may be actually able to fix the problem, but even then, in just telling someone you don't want to associate with them, you draw tangible lines for yourself around which you believe is valuable in your life and allow yourself and others to move on. Sure, communication hurts because of such stark differences in points of view and a pain in our hearts as we face the reality of the situation. But as we erase those false realities of peace that we've created by avoidance, our vision for the future clears and it's a clean break. But we all do shun from this, knowing the benefits of the situation, because the possibility of explosion and unforeseeable shifts is directly in front of us when we're facing someone face to face. We know that another person's emotions are just as volatile as our own, so we latch onto this illogical hope that our personal relationships will either stand steadfastly or dissolve painlessly if we avoid this awkwardness. But the avoidance positively correlates with the lack of trust one has in their own views. Though we hate to admit it, a lack of communication is cowardly, a sign of weakness. It was why I feared to express my anger. What if this conversation unveiled that it was me in the wrong? What if my argument just completely fell apart? Actually, conversations are visible manifestations of the strength of our beliefs. Because thoughts, we can always take them back. But words, conversations, we cannot. To ready ourselves for communication, we have to strengthen our mentality. We have to strengthen these thoughts because they impact ourselves and others. So, communication does not only strengthen your current mentality or your mentality for the future, but your present relationships as well. Firsthand, I've seen my parents' marriage progress over the last 17 years of my life, and the love that carried them through their first few years in America reduced in intensity because love is just a feeling, and feelings do die down. But their marriage had great success because they decided on a mutual will to share their lives with one another, a will that required effort that required discussing problems. They did not let different, undiscussed views on either side let their relationship fall apart, but rather communicated so they could be on the same page. Couples that can communicate effectively thereby understand the reasoning behind their partner's actions or lack thereof. We tidbits of information slowly add up through these conversations, and couples that have this consistent communication build a strong rapport in their relationship, one that can withstand any arrows that try to pierce it when it acts as a shield. In light of the fact that communication only betters our future, it's truly a mediocre effort to do what's best for us and just say, oh, I don't want to talk to them right now, or what could I even say? But listen, you are lying to yourself if you say you haven't been constantly checking their Twitter favorites or constantly resisting so hard to not click on their Snapchat stories. Every single moment does consume you. You may think that the communication will be the end of you, but actually, this constant thinking, this constant stalking was already the end of you. More exactly, your well-being. So when I had thoughts like these in mind, I really thought that communication was going to be the end of me when I faced him. But a few minutes later, the words were not swirling around in my brain, but out in the open, and the sense of relief was amazing. But what did my choice to communicate really allow me to do in the present? In other words, how am I now? Communication allowed me to move forward because in the present, I have taken things that I didn't have. I lost the vitality that I used to have before this situation. I absorbed myself with my family, my friends who were joyous at my success, even calculus, photo shoots, stationery. Through this conversation, I realized that I was losing and wasting my time if I did not choose to move on. In the words of R.H. Sine, remember the reward in letting go, and try not to focus on the pain of moving on. Every single one of us has one of these realizations we want, deserve, need from communication, and that was mine. Communication allowed the wound to stop festering. It was not a completely healed wound, but a clean wound, ready to heal. The memories do sneak in from time to time, but the wound, it's already scabbing over. So I want you to know that communication is not the end-all be-all, but rather the opportunity for starting anew. In short, to answer that question I said earlier, I'm standing in front of all of you right now, doing great. So I urge each and every single one of you to think of those nagging people or situations in your life like an itchy Band-Aid. We tend to peel off bandages very slowly, furthering pain with each tug, but the constant agony is still torture. Communication rips it off in one stroke. You may feel a slight sting, but the worst is already over. It's the correct way to begin forgetting. Sorry, that's the Band-Aid. It's the correct way to begin forgetting, mending, focusing, and lastly, living. Thank you.